Yeah, it's really great to be here in Camden. Thank you everyone for having us here. And for Rutgers Camden for hosting us in this space, and the Rutgers Faculty Union, who are really invaluable in securing the space and making sure that we're able to have this here. So thank you so much. And yeah, this is just a really important issue, and I'm so glad that we're able to be here to learn together to fight this project that would take lots of really dangerous material and bring it through an already overburdened community. Yeah, we've already done some really amazing work on this project. We've passed 15 municipal resolutions and have gotten over nearly 100 organizations to sign on to a letter to Governor Murphy asking him to reject permits for this project. And this is just another really important tool in getting the word out and getting our legislators to actually make choices that value our health and safety and the environmental justice of this community and others in South Jersey. So I'm going to pass it back to Angel.
So before we start, I want to address some access issues. So if you do need to use facilities while you are here, if you walk out the door, make a right, and then make an immediate other right, it's like a U-shaped hallway. Both bathrooms are there. There's also a refillable water fountain there if you don't want to use the single-use plastic bottle that we have in the back. Also, due to COVID, we said in the beginning, but if you're not actively eating or speaking in the panel, if you can take off, put your masks on for the duration of the entire forum. Oh, please make sure you sign in the back if you have not signed in. That way you can be up to date on the great things that we're doing. And water brush, back in the right corner with Ben right there, there's a blue table so you can sign it. Thank you.
Cool. So we're gonna just walk through this evening. So we can actually go to the next slide. Cool. So we're going to start with a panel. We're going to hear from some amazing folks that are doing work both on environmental justice, both in Camden and statewide, and also people who are working of individuals impacted by these environmental justice issues. And then we're going to dive into some actions that we can take, that we're all going to take together in order to stop this project. We're also going to, after the speakers each speak, have some time for Q&A. And what we're going to do after each speaker speaks is folks are going to, Ben, can you raise your hand? So Ben's in the back over there with some note cards. And we're going to ask folks if they have questions to write those on note cards, write your name and also what town you're from. And then Ben's going to collect those and bring them up, and we're going to shuffle through them. We're going to call on you if your question is chosen, and then you can come up to this mic right here, ask the question, and our panel will answer it for you to the best of their abilities.
Great. So we're going to start off with a land acknowledgement. I wrote it down. If I mispronounce anything, please forgive me. We acknowledge that this land is a traditional territory of the living Lenape peoples. Their presence is imbued in the land and the water surrounding us. May we nurture our relationship with our indigenous neighbors and share the responsibility to their homeland where we all reside today. So without further ado, I want to introduce you all to Kate Delaney, South Jersey organizer with Food and Water Watch and South Jersey Progressive Democrat extraordinaire. She will be moderating tonight's panel.
Thank you, Angel. Thanks, Noah. And I think we're going to move on to our first panelist.
Good evening. Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening.
It's a good thing to be alive after the storm and the issues of COVID, amen. So it's a good thing that we all are here and continue to work that God has put us in place to do. My name is Roy Jones. I'm a minister, but I've spent 51 years in environmental justice in the city and the region. But first, I want to, first of all, welcome all of you to Camden, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Welcome. We're excited that people have come out to be a part of this organizing effort to bring light to what's going on in this area and how it impacts us all. And my task is to talk about the city of Camden and what impacts it, and how the LNG plant also will have an effect on this city if it's approved. So there's a handout, and the title is Camden, New Jersey Environmental Profile and Demographics. And so the first thing I want to say about Camden is I know you've heard a lot about Camden, and if you listen to a lot of the radio ads and TV ads from the county political people, their position is that Camden is rising, that a lot is going on, exciting things, millions of dollars are being spent in the city of Camden. But I have news for you. If you live in Camden and you work in Camden, the way we see it is there's a tale of two cities. There's an exciting waterfront, a developed waterfront, and then the other part of the city is the real Camden. So if you ever want to see the real Camden versus just the waterfront, then you must do a walking tour of the city. And it will be plain to you that indeed this is a tale of two cities. One very developed, the other struggling under all kinds of pressure just to get through the day. So one of the things I want to share with you, just some data about Camden, some of the demographics, and some of it, all of I'm going to talk about tonight is going to shock you. First of all, Camden used to have a population of 120,000 people. Today, that population is at 73,236 people. So we have lost a lot of people, but a lot of people moved because of the city was just falling apart. So I gave, on this profile, I laid out the ethnic makeup of the city. Of course, it's mostly 90% Black and brown folk, and a smattering of whites and Hispanics, Asians and other groups. So one of the important things about this, to talk about this imbalance, is the poverty level in the city of Camden. So we have a 34% poverty level, but that's the level that they measure. But if you walk through the city, you'll see that this poverty level is much deeper than that and much more profound. But one of the more important things too is that the child poverty rate is the highest in the nation. So this is one of the cities with the highest child poverty rate in the nation. The median income is $28,000 for a family of 3 persons. Think about that. The per capita income is $16,000. The average county resident income is $85,000. So you can see how poor this city is. And of course, we all know about Camden as a crime capital of the nation. But I want to talk about environmental justice and environmental issues. And I'm going to speed it up because I have 7 minutes. Generally, when you are in church and you speak, you have at least 45 minutes. Amen. So listen, if you want me to talk fast, say amen. If you don't say amen, I'm going to just get real slow on it. All right? Amen. So I want you to know that there are 168 known contaminated sites in the city of Camden. Known. There are many more that have not been categorized. We have a gas-powered plant that emits all kinds of VOCs and toxic waste into the air. But Camden is noted for illegal dumpers. So on that pictorial that you have to your left, I believe, you'll see that that is Bergen Square neighborhood. There's a 1-block development of nothing but toxic dirt. 1,400 tractor trailer loads of toxic dirt was dumped right smack in the middle of a neighborhood, 1 block from a school. Typical of what happens in Camden. Camden has many junkyards and scrap metal plants. In fact, the New York Times described Camden as one of the largest scrap producing, metal producing processing towns on the East Coast. So they're crushing metal and they're crushing all kinds of debris and shipping it across the world. Camden is home to a regional sewage treatment plant. So if you don't know what that means, I'm going to describe it to you. 400,000 households every day go to the bathroom at least 3 times a day. All of their sewage comes to Camden. All of it. So imagine the neighborhood that is situated in, which is called Waterfront South. What do you think the smell in that neighborhood is like on a day, a very hot day, and that smell is sitting out in open vats, just marinating. The smell is marinating. And so on many days that I go there, after I leave there, I have to go take my medicine, my allergy pills, and just try to get back to normal. One time I went into a meeting at the CCMUA, the treatment plant, and as I was walking in the door, I literally fell to the ground. The smell was that profound that it brought tears to my eyes, and I just started crying. I fell to the ground. And it came to my mind that how could people even live in this area? And so what God has done is that the people that live there, they never basically open their windows, and their sense of smell has been completely changed. And so what I smell is different from what they smell. They only smell 10% of what I smell. I get the whole 9 yards, 90% to 100. So those are just some of the things that I want to share with you about Camden. But one of the major things I want to share is that there's a data that says that truck traffic in Camden amounts to 328,500 trucks a year that come in and out of Camden and in and out of Camden neighborhoods. So the LNG plant will have a profound effect if you add more trucks and more diesel and more emissions to this situation. So we're here to talk about why this should not happen. To compound this issue will present more than the issues that I'm even talking about today. Camden has a high cancer rate and a very high asthma rate and respiratory problem issues. It's home to 2 ports, not 1, 2, which means that the trucks coming into the port is producing diesel fuel, and they're producing chemicals and particles that goes into the air that people breathe. That's not healthy. The ship they're bringing in has the worst diesel fuel that you can imagine. They're also pumping that air and that poison into the air too. Camden residents are breathing in this level of toxic air. Schools, lead poison water, asbestos in the school, and mercury has been found in the schools. When several years ago I did organizer work, the average percent of lead poisoning in the water nationally is 12 parts per billion. In one of the worst schools in the city, it was 487 parts per billion. This was at a school, I want you to know this, 12 parts per billion, up to 487 parts per billion. These children were drinking poison water. And they already were children that were already compromised intellectually. They came from parents that were addicts. And so they were drinking every morning poison water from the fountains, from the schools in Camden. In this one neighborhood, Waterfront South, and I'm going to wrap it up, which is near the end of Camden, the south end, there are 17 polluting industries in this one neighborhood. One neighborhood has 17 polluting industries with the sewage treatment plant that surrounds it, with the trash incinerator plant that surrounds it, and with other industries that pollute the air, water, and soil. There were 3,000 vacant properties and abandoned properties in Camden. So when you go to our neighborhoods, many of these neighborhoods are like Camden to many dumpers and contractors is the dumping ground of the region. The dumping ground of the region. What is my point? My point about the LNG plant is this. If you compare and you accumulate all of the issues that Camden people are already facing, and then you add the possibility of other compounding environmental issues, what you have is a perfect storm for an environmental disaster. And what do I mean by that? And I'm going to close with that. During Hurricane Sandy, it was the worst hurricane in the history of America. Why? Because two competing, colliding major storms were converging together and exploding at the same time. That's called a perfect storm. If this LNG plant comes to Camden, we have the possibility of a perfect environmental disaster, destroying, and I use that word perfect in a very loose way, but you understand what I'm saying. If it all comes together, if you add all these other compounding trucks and all these other pollutions that come from this plant, and the possibility that this fuel can explode, it will destroy hundreds and thousands of people in the city. So we must stand up against the LNG plant. And I am excited about fighting this issue, standing up on this issue, and making sure that the LNG plant never sees the light of day. Thank you so much.
Today, and we did want to say thank you for being in this place for 51 years. And we want to invite everyone to check out information about this group, which is the National Institute for Health Human Spaces. And Mr. Jones is doing all of this important work, again, on so many fights here in Camden that are really important. And I'm going to walk over to the microphone. To introduce our next speaker, Tracy Carluccio, the Deputy Director of Delaware Riverkeeper Networks, and truly an authority on this project. So introducing Tracy, thank you. Thank you.
Is it on? Okay, thank you very much. So can you want me to forward it? I can do that. Okay. So I'd like to give a little context to our discussion about the Gibbstown and Wyalusing proposed LNG export terminal for our discussion here tonight. So if you look at this map, you'll see that this project actually has an enormous footprint. It's not one terminal, it's not one rail route or truck route, it's an enormous project. And up at the very top, you'll see that's where in Bradford County and Wyalusing Township, they want to build a liquefaction plant, excuse me, to liquefy shale gas that's extracted from the shale fields in the Marcellus in Pennsylvania. They would pipe it over to this plant they want to build, and then it would travel in order to avoid a pipeline, which the company didn't want to spend money on or time on. It would travel over land. First time in the nation, this kind of a logistic operation is being attempted. And it would travel about 200 miles through Pennsylvania, through New Jersey. It would cross over the Delaware Bridge, land in Pennsauken, if you're traveling on the rail route, and travel down through Camden County, Gloucester County, to Gibbstown, which is in Greenwich Township, in Gloucester County on the Delaware River. There at the terminal that they want to build, they would transload LNG, that is liquid methane, frac gas, from rail cars and trucks directly onto waiting ships. And they would do this 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. it would be a perpetual transloading operation. Transloading is considered to be the most dangerous operation in the handling of LNG. It's usually accomplished in one day at a large facility. It will take 2 weeks to fill a ship, perpetually loading it, and it will never stop. It is fraught with danger, not only from human error, but from the equipment. Logistically, this has not been attempted anyplace else. We're being used as guinea pigs. So this project is not built yet. The dock that they want to export the LNG from and where the ships would come in would triple potentially the activity of the site. There's one dock there now, and that's not for liquefied natural gas. It's for liquefied hazardous gas, which is also a problem, but it's not for LNG. And the liquefaction plant in Wyalusing Township is also on hold. It has not been built. The public controversy over this project has held up this project. They would be operating and sending LNG out of Gibbstown today if the public had not stood up and tried to stop this. So on the next slide, you can see here one of the routes. It's called Rail Route B. And this is an illustration so you can see one of the 4 routes that they might take to get the LNG from Wyalusing down to Gibbstown. 2 of the routes are rail routes, and Rail Route B swerves across just north of Philadelphia and then turns south on the Pennsylvania side of the river across from Trenton. So that is a very long route that exposes Trenton, Mercer County, Burlington County, Camden County, Gloucester County, until it gets down to the Gibbstown site. Rail Route A goes more directly, also crossing the river at the Delaware Bridge from the Pansauken Landing there, down through Camden and down to Gibbstown. The truck route could take 295, which also, as you know, we've heard here today, and it's very important to understand that no matter what they do, they can use trucks or rails. And if the truck route uses 295, then we're going to be facing a problem, as Roy explained here, with truck emissions. And that would come either through Camden or it would go down the Blue Route and a little bit south on 95 and cross through Chester, another environmental justice community, and go over the Commodore Berry Bridge and then go north into the Gibbstown side. So every single route is dangerous. This is one of the most heavily populated regions in the United States, the mid-Atlantic, and we're sending rail and trucks through carrying one of the most explosive cargoes that any container can carry. So let's look at the next slide here. So this is a screenshot of an interactive map that Delaware Riverkeeper Network has on its website. You can go on there, you can actually put your home address in, and it'll zoom in and show you how close you are to the route. But I took a screenshot of this so you could get a zoomed in look at Camden and how Camden is a bullseye here. Camden is a target right here. And it's because that red line travels down from Pansauken after the trains or the trucks come into the north of the city. And it travels down through the city. And those mauve areas that you see are areas mapped from the US Census. And they show the density of low-income communities and people of color. So what do you see there? A lot of mauve and a lot of dark mauve. And what that means, just as Roy said, this is an environmental justice issue. There's no getting away from it. And I want to point out that little curve, that dog legs curve that you see in the route, as maybe Jocelyn can point it. See that dog leg? Okay, that dog leg right in the middle, right there, in the middle of Camden. That's exactly 3,492 feet from where we're sitting. That's about 2/3 of a mile. And what that means is that if LNG were going on that rail route today, and there was a derailment or an accident, and LNG were released, we would be first impacted and we would be most intensely impacted. either by a cold, super cool vapor cloud that can be fatal, or by a fire that is so hot it cannot be extinguished, or by an explosion, which can actually happen in a cascading fashion and move outwards from the site of release. Can you imagine what would happen to Camden if there were an LNG release? The United States Emergency Management Handbook advises fire officials, if there's a release of LNG, to evacuate immediately at least 1 mile. We're 2/3 of a mile. How would you possibly be able to get away from the vapor cloud, from the fire, from the explosion? You wouldn't be able to. What they tell you in the handbook is stand back and let it burn. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker. And thank you for your time. And we'll get to the report.
Dramatic ending there. Next up, I'm delighted to introduce Marcus Sibley, truly a leading voice on the issue of environmental justice in New Jersey. And I'm gonna have to look at my phone because Marcus has so many accomplishments here. So Marcus Sibley serves as New Jersey NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Chairman, the president of the Southern Burlington County NAACP branch, and the chairman of the New Jersey Progressive Equitable Energy Coalition. Thank you, Marcus.
Hello, 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 hello. One, two, one, two, one, two, check, check. Oh, no, I'm straight. So, good afternoon, how are we doing?
Good.
How are we doing? I'm here to be excited because we need to bring this excitement into our communities to make sure that we stop this. So I want to make sure that we are energized and understand that everything that the Reverend, as well as Tracy just shared, and as what Lisa's going to share, this is why we all have to be activated. We have to be very serious about this because we've always had issues, but this is a different beast. So we have to be very honest about what is coming toward us. I want to start by saying something really, really quickly. Frustrations don't come from realities. Frustrations come when there is hope that accompanies possibilities. Frustration doesn't come from realities. When we know that something is a reality, we deal with it. We learn to accept it. We learn whether we're going to accept how it is or we decide that we're not going to accept it. But we know what it is and then we adjust accordingly. But frustration happens when there's a possibility of something happening and it doesn't. And you have hope that things can change. And when it doesn't happen and when it doesn't change, that's when you start to get frustrated. And I can tell you that many of us on this panel and many of us who are tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in, people are frustrated. And we're frustrated because we have been getting so many things in New Jersey that has given us the hope that things could change. One of those things that we got just about 2 years ago, we have a leading in the nation cumulative impact bill. Now, let me give you a little information about the cumulative impact bill. The bill defines an overburdened community as any community where 35% of households qualify as low income, according to the US Census, 40% of households are minority, or 40% of households have limited English proficiency. One look at the Reverend's handout, we can see that we are absolutely in an overburdened community. Over 300, close to 400 municipalities in our state are considered overburdened communities. So yeah. Now, the bill requires that the Department of Environmental Protection evaluate the environmental and public health impacts of the following facilities on overburdened communities when reviewing the following permit. So this is the important piece. The cumulative impacts bill allows the Department of Environmental Protection to take into account what's already in a community when they're deciding if they're gonna grant a permit. That's really important. We didn't do that before. So when we have a document, thank you so much for producing this, you have a document that tells you all the different things that's happening in the community, then it should be easy. 1 + 1 = 2. No, it should not be here. So now we have a standard that we can go, and the rules are still being made. So that law, it's it's not enacted yet. So that's why we have a lot of things still going on. So that's why we're fighting so hard. But let me name some of these facilities. Major sources of air pollution, i.e. gas-fired power plants and cogeneration facilities, resource recovery facilities or incinerators, sludge processing facilities, sewage treatment plants with a capacity of more than 50 million gallons per day, transfer stations or solid waste facilities, recycling facilities that receive at least 100 tons of recyclable material per day, scrap metal facilities, landfills, or medical waste incinerators, except those attendant to hospitals and universities. So again, frustrations don't come from realities. Frustrations come when there's hope that accompanies possibilities. So you have a law that's just defined all of these different areas that we now can pay attention to. But why are we frustrated? We're frustrated. One, when we talk about incinerators. Incinerators get a thing called renewable energy credits. So incinerators who are burning and putting all this filth into our atmosphere, these toxins that are going into our body, impacting our health that Dr. Lisa here can tell you all about, that is being considered renewable energy. So they're getting credits, so they're getting subsidized, they're getting tax assistance, they're getting money, they're getting treated like they're doing a service when they're hurting the community. That's a problem. So that impacts your hope, doesn't it? It makes you feel like, where are we going if something like that is being rewarded? That's one thing. Then you have, we mentioned these facilities like EMR keep catching on fire. We have fires here in Camden, we have fires here in Newark, and what's happening with them? How many of these places are getting fined repeatedly, but what's making them stop? If we've seen and we know that anytime these things burn, all these toxins are coming to the air, what are we doing to say we want this to stop? It's mixed messaging. How are you giving me a cumulative impact bill when you're telling me you care, but we still have facilities that are able to operate and then continue to have fines from fires, but they still aren't able to continue to operate? That's a problem. That hurts my hope there. Another one, yeah, I'm gonna skip to that. Oh yeah, mentioning the contaminated soil. Now, recently, there's been movement to try to get that removed. But just think about for the decades that residents are not only dealing with the aesthetics, like think about it. A giant mound, stories high, of toxic dirt. What does that do to the psychology of a neighborhood? How do you feel when you see a mound of dirt? Because what is dirt supposed to represent? Dirt is supposed to represent growth. We use dirt to plant. Dirt is a form of how we bring life. So something that's supposed to be a really good thing, people see it as toxic. What does that do to the mentality of the people? How do you expect people to be excited walking around their neighborhood when they have to see that? So that's the piece that we don't really talk about. We don't talk about the impacts that aesthetics have on psychology. We don't think about, we speak about mental health, but we don't think about the environmental impacts on a person's mental health. So we have environments and we have residents who have to deal with these things on a daily basis. And we're wondering, what are we going to do in terms of a commitment to these people to show we're not only going to improve their air quality, not only going to improve their water quality, but we want to improve the aesthetics. So speaking of aesthetics, we're talking today about an LNG facility. So what's LNG? That is liquefied natural gas. Nice word, right? Sounds wonderful. It's just methane. Let's just call it what it is. There are people who get paid lots of money from marketing firms, and it is their job to put a nice bow on what this is. This is methane. And if you're ever curious about what methane is the primary contributor to the formation of ground level ozone, a hazardous air pollutant and greenhouse gas, exposure to which causes 1 million premature deaths every year. You know what this is? This is Maternal Health Week. So think about that. So we have methane causing 1 million premature deaths every year. Methane is also a powerful greenhouse gas. Over a 20-year period, it is 80 times more potent at warming than carbon dioxide. So we have something that not only will be volatile, as Tracy pointed out, but it's also terrible for the environment. And we have to start making decisions about and making investments into moving away from this, because we see the data. The data shows that this methane is killing us. So on one end, there are health impacts from it, but on the other end, this is an absolute violation of the direction we're supposed to be going in as a state. We're supposed to be a leader in our country. That cumulative impacts bill was a big deal from a national standpoint. I work for the National Wildlife Federation. We do these fights all across the nation. That bill was a very, very, very big deal. So what is it saying to our residents? What is it saying to our entire country if we're not stopping this right where it is? This should be done. This shouldn't even be to this point. So this is why we have a plea to everyone who's tuning in, and anyone who will watch the replay of this. We need you to contact your governor's office. We need you to contact your Department of Environmental Protection. We need you to contact your local elected officials. We need you to call anyone who has an opportunity and has a direct line to your governor to say, this isn't who we are. The NAACP is involved because anything environmental related affects Black people worse than first. So we have a vested interest in being in this fight. But, and I'm gonna end here, as Tracy pointed out, this thing doesn't come into Camden and make a U-turn. It goes through many, many, many different municipalities. So it's gonna be a lot more than Camden who are gonna be impacted if this actually gets enacted. So this is why this isn't a Camden issue. We've been good at that. We've been good at saying, oh, that's happening in Camden, I don't have to worry about it. We've been very, very good at that. That's not the case. It's not the case. It's not just Camden. It's going to affect Camden, but it's going to affect everybody along those different routes. So if you have gotten comfortable with remaining silent about environmental justice, this is your wake-up call. So I need everybody to wake up, because the next time we meet, if this passes, it could be because there's a news crew showing a scene that we don't even want to even think about. So let us be vigilant, let us be strong. Let's do what we need to do. All power to the people.
Thank you, Marcus, especially for the call to action. Okay, now it works. Thank you, Marcus, and we appreciate it, especially the call to action. And now a quick call to action, a reminder to everybody in the room that it will be a great point to start thinking about questions that you want to ask our speakers. So everyone should have gotten a index card. If you didn't, Ben over in the corner there can get you one. So please do be thinking about questions that you want to ask for our speakers here. And our next speaker is Dr. Lisa Cerseo. And we are honored to have her here with us. Dr. Lisa is an educator, an academic, hospitalist, and chair of health and public policy at ACP-NJ. So thank you, Dr. Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, is this on? Better? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to have a hard time following these speakers. This has been wonderful. So I was brought on to talk about the health impacts. As Katie said, I'm an academic hospitalist, so I'm taking care of patients who are sick enough to get admitted to the hospital. And I'm educating our medical students, our residents, our other faculty, because certainly I think the medical community is waking up to the significant impacts. Mark was talking about the effects of methane. There was actually a new study that had come out from the T.H. Chan School of Public Health from Harvard that estimates that premature deaths are about 10.2 million globally, which ends up being about 35,000 in the US just from air pollution. So the magnitude of that, if you're thinking about
the COVID and certainly COVID has not been fun. As a hospitalist, I can attest it has not been a fun couple of years. But if you're thinking about the magnitude of these ongoing problems from pollution, from climate change, because we haven't even touched on the overall climate change part, because a terminal like this that's going to be investing in fossil fuels into the future is really causing a two-pronged issue. So it's worsening climate change, and from climate change, there's tons of things. So we have urban heat islands. When there's more heat, we have more emissions for MIs, for myocardial infarctions, heart attacks. We have more strokes. We have more renal disease. There are all new conditions that are actually being discovered related to heat. There's something called a Mesoamerican Nephropathy. It's a fancy term basically saying people are getting dehydrated because they're working out in fields and they're not being adequately rehydrated. But this has been seen all over the world. It's been shown in Sri Lanka. It's global. So these are effects of climate change and increasing heat. We see vector-borne changes in Lyme disease, changes in West Nile virus, all of these different vector-borne illnesses. And then of course we have to think about in this area, we have to think about flooding. We already talked about the antiquated sewage system and the impact of infectious disease on our community. And we know that when there are flooding situations, more people are coming into the ER with GI-borne illnesses. So there are so many issues related to climate change. If I had 2.5 hours and 3 hours, I would go on and on about this. But to focus on more of the direct impacts of the particulate matter, the direct air pollution that's going to result from this LNG terminal. I know the slide might seem a little bit busy, but the particulate matter 2.5 is really what we're talking about here. It's one of the constituents. So the particulate matter 2.5 is this tiny, tiny, tiny particles that are getting into your distal airways, your distal alveoli, and they're crossing into your bloodstream. So they're essentially becoming part of you. Now they don't belong in you, so they trigger inflammatory reactions. They trigger coagulation cascades. That's why we're seeing all of these downstream effects, like heart attacks, like strokes, because your inflammatory cascade is being activated. It causes mutagenicity. We talked about, I think Reverend Jones talked about the cancer risks, and 1 in 6 cases of lung cancer are actually attributable to fossil fuel pollution. So this is all because there's direct effects, there's oxidative stress, there's mutagenicity, there's effects on our body causing more cancers. So and again, I can go on and on with all of these impacts, but particulate matter is one of the big constituents, and particulate matter is not all the same. So in this diagram, you can see that there's some heavy metals that are attached to it. There's increasing studies now that probably there are different effects from different types of constituents that are on there. We know that traffic pollution might be worse for some people than different type of particulate matter pollution. So this is a very new field. There are just now whole journals now being dedicated to helping climate change, but this is really burgeoning. So I would say, we don't even know fully the extent that this is impacting our communities. But as a hospitalist, I'm seeing people who are being admitted, who I'm taking care of, that definitely this is not accidental. So I have patients with emphysema, with COPD, who are coming in, and I might get them better. I might tweak their medicines and get them feeling better, but then I send them back to these same overburdened communities, and they're breathing in the same air, the same pollutants, the same particulate matter, and they get readmitted. And they're doing everything right. It's through no fault of their own, but they're coming back in and they're getting sicker and sicker each time. I don't take care of children. I have a bunch of children in the front row, but it's hard on the children. So they have these vulnerable little airways. And 1 in 3 children in Camden and Newark have asthma, which is heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And they have long-lasting structural changes to their little tiny lungs because they're at an important developmental stage. So when they're exposed to this particulate matter, they have changes that are going to impact them for the rest of their lives. So this is serious. When we're talking about our pregnant women, just thinking again about vulnerable populations, Marcus was talking about maternal health week. My goodness, I mean, our pregnant women are so vulnerable. There have been studies that women, particularly of lower socioeconomic status, who are living near power plants, near highways, are at higher risk for miscarriage, at higher risk for prematurity, low birth weight, all of these really significant outcomes. And if we're looking at children who are within 150 feet of a highway are at higher risk for asthma. So as we're talking about these increasing trucks coming through, we're talking about our children breathing in this air. We're talking about pregnant women breathing in this air and being impacted. So it's enormously impactful. And I put on there some of the already some of the definite associations. There's effects on cognition. Lead is one piece of it. Particulate matter and air pollution has been associated with poor cognitive scores in the elderly, more Alzheimer's, but also in our children. So this is really across the spectrum. And there has been no safe threshold for particulate matter. So even levels that are considered safe, there's been no safe threshold for cardiovascular complications with particulate matter 2.5. So I think that's very important to consider. And again, like I said, there's some possible effects. We don't even know necessarily because we're just doing the research right now. So, we're talking about being a guinea pig area. We don't want to be doing these studies to find out 10 years later what the impacts are on our community and on our patients. If you can go to the fact, I can go to the next slide. So we were talking about the bomb trains already. I won't belabor this. There's going to be nothing that physicians can do about this. And this would be incredibly sad. There would be nothing. I mean, we have a wonderful trauma center. There would be nothing that we could do about this. These burn hotter and faster, and it will continue until all of the gas is consumed. And again, if there's an impact in the water supply, there's not only the animals, but 17 million people that could be affected by impacting these waterways. If we're thinking about, again, that impact with the trucks, it's going to be increasing by about 1,650 polluting truck trips every day. So again, I'm thinking about the children who are trying to play outside. I'm thinking about the people who are walking to work. We tell patients to exercise. I tell patients, get outside and exercise. I can't tell my patients to get out and exercise if this is going to be what they're breathing. That completely defeats the purpose. And then, and of course, there's quality of life issues with having all of these trucks barreling through. I want to close though on saying that so the U.S. healthcare system is wonderful in a lot of ways. I'm a product of it, but we don't focus on preventative health. We are very good at all of the downstream management when conditions develop, but the entire model of healthcare in the U.S. has to switch to more of a preventative focus. And blocking something like this LNG terminal is a preventative health measure. So you go to the doctor, you get your blood pressure checked, you get your cholesterol checked. That is all preventative health. Blocking this is preventative health. So I hope that I can impress all of you with that. And, for every reason that the LNG companies can come up with to put this forward, I would say that there are millions of reasons sitting in here, sitting in their homes in Camden, in Cherry Hill, in Gibbstown, all along this route. There are millions of reasons to fight against it. So thank you so much.
That's all so much. And we're going to actually hop into questions just in a moment. But I think that we have heard a lot of reasons to get plugged into this project. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. So we're going to review this at the end as well as right now. So if you all want to take out your phone, you can join us at one of the many actions that we're going to take to call on Governor Murphy to reject permits for this project and reject all new fossil fuel infrastructure in Jersey. You can text the word bird dog, B-I-R-D-O-G, it says up here and over there, to the number 23321. And that'll get you plugged into our text system that'll just give you a little ping every time we have an action targeting Murphy, asking him to do the things that go through the commitments that he's already made to environmental justice, specifically around this project and all other fossil fuel infrastructure in Jersey. So that's one way that you can get plugged in. Another one, which I think Tracy has mentioned, and also we can talk a little bit more during the Q&A about, is just that Biden has jurisdiction to to reenact a ban on LNG by rail car. And LNG by rail, as Tracy and others have mentioned, is extremely volatile and dangerous. And so there are going to be some paper petitions at the table over there, and you can sign them afterwards. You can also, after this presentation, go up and scan this QR code and sign the petition to ask Biden to reenact a ban on LNG by rail. So without further ado, we're going to jump into some questions. We're going to just collect those really fast, and in the meantime, I think we can just dive into one of the ones from online.
Sure, yeah, so we have some good questions that were submitted by folks online. So a first one that I think maybe both Minister Jones and Tracy might want to speak to. So what is the game plan for dealing with those causing the pollution that we were outlining, I think, both, you know, caused by this project as well as the ongoing issues in Camden? Yeah, so what is the plan for dealing with the people that are causing the pollution? What is the plan for, you know, repercussions for those causing the pollution? LNG and then all of the issues that Minister Jones.
With the mask on, I can't hear.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
a little hard of hearing,
Sure.
so.
Yeah, so the question again is what, you know, consequences will those causing the pollution face? So again, both, you know, the forestry to energy as well as all the problems that, again, that we outlined, the illegal dumping.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello. All right. So the question is, well, what can we do? What should we do? Well, one of the things that, in regards to this illegal dump site and the implications of that, is that we got with a group called the Eastern Law Center to file an amicus brief so that we can sit at the table as the Superior Court judge or the Supreme Court judge in New Jersey is hearing the case about this illegal dump site. So in New Jersey, we were able to put enough pressure on the state of New Jersey, the Attorney General's office, so they filed a lawsuit against the polluters. Then the city filed a lawsuit against the polluters. And then our community-based law efforts will be sitting at the table demanding that these polluters be brought to justice, that they may be made, this community be made whole through redevelopment and absolutely cleaning up that site and testing to see what health effects there were from this contaminated dirt. So those are some of the practical things that we're doing, some of the work that we're doing, and we're sitting at the table right now with the law firms that are representing these polluters, demanding that they do the right thing. But it's not just that they're gonna do the right thing, the judge is gonna also encourage them to make sure it's done right. And because they have violated so many state laws, they are in deep, deep trouble, and they have been caught, and the community caught them in this particular act of basically terrorizing the community.
Great, thank you. So there's a couple choke points that are strategically important right now. One of them is there was a special permit granted under the Trump administration to a subsidiary, a company that is under New Fortress Energy, which is the company that wants to build this entire project, to transport the liquefied natural gas, the frack gas, from Wyalusing to Gibbstown in rail cars. Now, there is a long-standing ban that had been in place, also lifted after this special permit was given under the Trump administration. But that long-standing ban was put in place for public safety reasons, and it did not allow liquefied natural gas to be transported by rail car. It was considered to be just too dangerous to allow. And so we've never had this type of transport in the United States. This special permit was granted by the Trump administration, but the company, because they've been held up by the public, never did actually use it. So it expired in November of 2021. And they did come in the last day and file an application for extending this permit. All of our communities have been involved in speaking to the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which is under the Department of Transportation, and will be making the decision, saying we do not want this special permit to be extended or a new permit to be granted to this company to transport the LNG through our communities. We are not a sacrifice zone, and you're not going to use us like a bunch of guinea pigs, because that's basically what would happen. This has never been done on this scale for this long a route in the United States. So that petition right now is on that table over there. There's 2 clipboards right on the stage here. If anyone wants to pick it up, you can pass it around the audience. They look just like this. And if you can sign that would be great. Also, we're sharing through the hybrid event that we're having here tonight, the link to the petition, and you can sign it and you can share it electronically. We're trying to get as many names on this petition during April so we can submit it in the beginning of May to this administration to say to Biden, you promised that you were going to pull back LNG by rail. It was one of his campaign promises when he was running for president. And he did take the first step, but the second step has not been taken yet. And certainly the special permit should not be reissued to this company because LNG by rail is not safe. It hasn't been proven safe. And the rail cars they would be using to come through our communities are not even the rail cars that were required under the renewal of LNG being transported by rail car nationwide. And what happened there, and it's a little complicated, but what happened there is after the Trump administration then lifted the big rule, that is the federal rulemaking that prohibited LNG to be transported by rail car. Once they lifted that, the Biden administration, it was never used. The Biden administration said they would suspend that rule. And they did put out for public comment a suspension of that rule. The public comment period was participated in by a whole bunch of people. And it was actually closed in December. And they are deciding right now what they're going to be doing. So this petition also says to the Biden administration, you put out there a rule to suspend the Trump rule, and we want you to conclude that, and we want you to completely reinstate the full ban forever. So that's the story of the transport of LNG by rail. Now, as we heard, they can still transport this by truck. So killing the LNG by rail is a choke point, but it's not necessarily going to end the project. So it's very important that we also continue to be absolutely vigilant and oppose every opportunity we can permits for this project. There are still permits that are needed from the Murphy administration. And they're from New Jersey DEP. It's an air permit. It's a permit related to handling toxics on the property. And those permits have not even been applied for yet. Also, DEP has been rolling out permits over the last year to this facility for everything they want. And we need to tell Governor Murphy, stop it. Tell your DEP that we do not want permits given for the liquefied natural gas plant because he actually said in 2020 that he did not want liquefied natural gas exported from Gibbstown. He said, oh, well, I'm for progress and building a terminal here, but I don't want LNG. And then he went ahead and voted for it at the Delaware River Basin Commission. So that's really two-faced. But he continues through allowing his DEP to roll out these permits to support the infrastructure on the land that would allow liquefied natural gas to be brought into that facility, put on ships and sent out. So we got to tell the Murphy administration, stop these permits. And they need to do it for health and safety reasons, and they need to do it for climate reasons, because this project totally undermines everything the Murphy administration is supposed to do for us. The last thing I want to say is that, you know, there's other opportunities that will arise. And as they arise, we need to really stay tuned. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is right now deciding whether or not they have jurisdiction over this project. If they do say that they have jurisdiction over this project, there will be a National Environmental Policy Act. It's a process for evaluating environmental impacts. And we have never seen an environmental impact study. As hard to believe, there's never been one done for this project. And if they do that under FERC, the public needs to take part. We're going to need to have thousands of comments put into the record. So that's coming up. So those are some of the choke points. we believe that we have to think strategically and we have to be ready to act whenever opportunity comes up to oppose this project. That's what we've been doing over the last 2 years. Delaware Riverkeeper Network is appealing every major permit for the project right now. And there are Pennsylvania organizations that appealed the air permit for Wyalusing. So we've stalled them, but it's not dead.
Great, thank you, Minister Jones and Tracy, for giving us a sense of how we stop these projects and hold people accountable. So a question that I think directed to Marcus and anyone else who wants to chime in. So we've heard a lot about cumulative impacts and those at the front lines of EJ disaster and how they would be impacted. Can you speak to what it would look like for power holders in New Jersey to make legislative choices to stop this project?
Question can be get out. All right.
You and others.
Whoever gave me that question, I don't like it too much. But before I answer that question, let me just say something quickly, just to go back on the previous question. How do we do this? First, let me give a shout out to all the groups that were involved in organizing today. So we have Camden for Clean Air, CFET, which is the Center for Environmental Transformation, Delaware Riverkeeper Network, Water Watch, National Institute of Health and Human Spaces, Our Revolution, Mercer County, Southern Burlington County, NAACP, Southern Jersey Progressive Democrats, and Empower New Jersey. So I mentioned that because one thing that you can do is support the groups that are doing the work. Because sometimes you can't get out and do it, but there are groups who are literally dedicated day in and day out who are having these conversations with the political leaders that you can't do because you're at work. So something simple you can do is look up the groups that were involved with this and find ways to donate or find ways to donate your time. But there are groups who are really committed to this work. And, you know, we're right here. Now to answer that question, and it's a really important question because our elected officials are a major piece in this puzzle, major piece. And this is where the power, and you hear when I kind of speak, I say all power to the people, because the people have the power. We have to remember that. This is a midterm year, ladies and gentlemen. So I see a lot of people when they get around elected officials, they kind of get starstruck. They want to take pictures. They want to put on their social media, hey, I was next to, which is great. But at the end of the day, they work for you. These are public servants. They have a job to do. It is your job to remind them what their job is. So if you have a midterm election, what if everyone who's watching this video said and called up to their elected officials, if I don't hear you make a public statement about denouncing this project, you won't get my vote. Isn't that what power is? If we have the power to elect people, and there are a lot of benefits for being an elected official. There's a lot. There's a lot of people do this professionally. Their entire lives, they didn't have a job. They have only been an elected official because there are benefits to being an elected official, but you have a job to do. So if your vote impacts, even let's take it to a local level, when these projects come to Camden, you have municipal government who votes on it. You have a planning board who votes on it. You have, then it goes up to your Department of Environmental Protection. There are many different people who we interact with every single day online in some form or fashion, or we see them around town who have an impact on what is happening in our state. So our power is in reminding people what their power is. You have the power to say no. You have the power. I see you online. I see you hugging up and smiling with people every day. It's a big party. Every time I see our elected officials, I don't care what's happening. It's COVID. Everybody's smiling. Like 6 million people dead. Everybody's smiling. It's not that funny. We have things that require the people with power to exercise their power and do what needs to be done for the people. So I'm imploring you. You have the opportunity, like you see us on this panel. People may assume we have more power than others. No. Every one of us have the exact same impact when we make a call to our elected official. Every one of us. It doesn't matter if you're in 90 organizations or 0. We all are one constituent. And when we call up, we all have the power to influence the people who represent us. So we need to realize the power that we have, and we need to remind the people who represent us why you're in office. You're not in office to just be in office. You're in office to make things better. So we're telling you, we have data. We have proven facts about what happens from methane. We have proven facts of what happens about why transporting something could be a really bad idea. We have seen this substance explode before. There's been a precedent already. We're not guessing. We're telling you what is going to happen. If we have that evidence and they ignore it, then you have to ask, why are they ignoring it? What could be the reason why someone would ignore facts?
Money.
I'm not saying that you are. We have many reasons why they might be saying no, but that means you have every reason to force them to say yes. So use your power. Your power is a vote. Your dollars are a vote. Let's not forget that. Let's stop forgetting that your vote isn't only what you cast in a ballot box. Your votes are your dollars. You can easily tell your elected officials, I'm not spending another dime in this town until you start representing me. It may take maybe a little bit inconvenience to go to another county, but I'm willing to go to another county until my representatives are representing my interests. Like if we're going to be about power, we have to exercise the power that we have. So let's exercise the power that we have. All power to the people.
Thank you, Marcus. We had a question from someone in the room about the problems of air pollution and methane that are going to be caused by this project and any studies that have been done. Perhaps Dr. Lisa or anyone else who wants to look at that?
Sure. So there have actually been a lot of studies surrounding COVID. So there were studies out of China, out of Italy, more studies out of Harvard, the TH Chancellor of Public Health that I alluded to, looking at the effects specifically on COVID acquisition and mortality, with increasing particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, all of these bad things that are in the air. And what we know is that the increasing air pollution is bad for COVID. So all that inflammation makes people predisposed to get COVID, and it also increases COVID mortality. And that's for every one microgram that increases in particulate matter. And we're already talking about very low thresholds in general, maybe 5 micrograms per meter cubed. They're very, very low level. So every tiny increment above that increases your risk for pneumonia. We've known that for years with children in terms of respiratory infections, ear infections. We know it now with COVID. So a lot of that discrepancy that we saw with Black and brown communities getting so sick from COVID was actually from the air that they were breathing, making them more vulnerable. So we already know this. And as I said, there's more and more studies coming out every day. But cardiovascular mortality is the biggest killer in the US. You know, we had been experiencing enormous gains in life expectancy. That's been plateauing. But a lot of lifestyle factors, environmental factors are now contributing to the fact that we are not living as long. Our quality of life is not as good, and we have to look to our environment to say, why is this?
Thank you. We have a couple questions that are sort of about logistics of the plan, asking when it would start, where would the LNG be going when it leaves this area? You know, what is the motive, or you know, what's the who is going to profit from this? So Tracy and maybe others would want to chime in.
Can you hear me? Well, first of all, the company New Fortress Energy is really a hedge fund. They haven't really been in the energy business that long. And so they're out to make it, frankly. And part of that has led to their business model, which is to try to avoid regulation below the radar so the public doesn't know what's going on, try to get quick approvals on things before anybody knows what's happening, and then also to do the old bait and switch. back in 2017, when they were asked by the municipality what they were going to be handling at this terminal, and asked point blank by the mayor, are you going to be handling liquefied natural gas? They said, oh, because we think it's too dangerous, is what the town said, to do that so close to us. These facilities are supposed to be in remote areas, not have backyards of Gibbstown adjoining the property. And they said, no, we won't handle LNG. At the very same time they told them that, they were behind closed doors meeting with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to get approval, to find out if they needed to go to them and get approval for exporting liquefied natural gas and bringing it in from Pennsylvania. So that's one way to describe where they're going to send this, because there's a lot of stories about where they're going to send this. And if you go on their website, we listen into their investor calls, we read their Securities and Exchange Commission reports. They have a very rosy picture about all the places they're going to sell this LNG. And they do have a couple of operating terminals. They have one in Puerto Rico. There's an import terminal there that they presumably would send the liquefied natural gas by ship from Gibbstown. However, they are right now buying gas elsewhere, and also they have a very small facility in Miami that's sending gas there. But as an illustration of how they operate, in Puerto Rico, they built that terminal without getting Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approval, and they're operating, and FERC came back to them after the fact and said, why didn't you come to us and get approval? And now they found they are under jurisdiction, and they might have to close down their entire terminal, but they're arguing in court that it's unfair. So basically, this project is supposed to send LNG to Puerto Rico, and we don't even know whether there will be a receiving terminal in Puerto Rico. Same story in Ireland. We've been working with our colleagues in Puerto Rico. They're wonderful. There's a grassroots community called We Want Sun that has been fighting this project and other fossil fuels, who want to power by sun and wind, which they have abundance of both in Puerto Rico. They don't want to power their electricity and get their energy from expensive liquefied natural gas from dirty fossil fuels. And this is what the community is saying. Unfortunately, the government is not quite as enlightened. But same thing is happening in Ireland. They're supposed to send this liquefied natural gas to Ireland, where our fellows in Ireland say, over our dead bodies. They've been fighting the import terminal that New Fortress Energy is trying to build in Ireland, in Shannon. And they've been fighting it now for at least a half a dozen years. And they went so far as to work to have Ireland ban fracking and pass a resolution against any import of liquefied natural gas, and then go to the European Union to try to get it ratified. I mean, this is the level that the people in Ireland are working at to try to keep dirty fossil fuels out of Ireland. And so that's another place that they have on their website. They're going to be sending it to Ireland. They have plans for Angola. They've signed contracts in Mexico. They have a pipeline and a power plant that they're feeding by gas that they buy in Jamaica. So we don't really know what the story is. We don't know where this gas will actually go, but they have a lot of, high sounding plans about what they're going to be doing with it. As I mentioned earlier, just quickly to finish that up, that they were supposed to be operating by now. Right now, there is a prohibition on them constructing any dock at the site because they cannot work in the river between March 15th and September 15th because of protections and the Army Corps of Engineers permit for Atlantic sturgeon. So this site is a very special site. It's one of the reasons that we oppose this project as an environmental organization. And it's because the Atlantic sturgeon, they spawn there, they have their babies there, the young of the year grow up in the grasses that have accumulated and are very healthy habitat for this federally endangered species and other fish and wildlife all along the riverfront where they want to build this dock. And they will have to you know, they believe they have the right to destroy that habitat in order to be able to build this dock. And the Army Corps of Engineers put a prohibition on them disturbing the water during the most sensitive part of the life cycle of the sturgeon. However, we don't believe it's protected enough. We believe it should be banned from being located there. There's very few places where the grasses and the habitat exist in the Delaware River anymore that are used by this endangered species. As a matter of fact, the Atlantic sturgeon in the Delaware is an ecotype that goes back hundreds and hundreds to archaic times. They're actually from the time of the dinosaur, and it's special only to the Delaware River. And there are between 200 and 300 individual adult animals left. So we're facing possibly the extinction of an ecotype of the Atlantic sturgeon if they build this dock. So that is the reason they can't construct right now. That's a long way of putting the story out there that's heartbreaking about what it's going to be doing environmentally. But they could come back in September, they could start construction. They still have to get permits that they don't have from New Jersey DEP. If the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission takes jurisdiction, it can hold the project up for 2 years while the environmental study is being done. Was there anything I left out, John?
No,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's yes, yeah. So lots of impact for profit for.
In terms of profit, yeah, New Fortress Energy is it's part of a big conglomerate fortress infrastructure, and they have you can go online, 200 subsidiaries. They have their fingers in a lot of pots. They want to build all sorts of fake or false solutions in terms of climate change, like biogas. They want to use hydrogen, what they call blue hydrogen, as well as green hydrogen. They're basically trying to greenwash themselves right now by trying to get their finger in every pie. And they do other things. It's a really weird company. They bought Gatehouse Media, which owns most of the large news outlets in the United States. So they're very weird, and they have their finger in a lot of pies, and they're all about making a buck. That's probably the most succinct answer.
It's called strategic.
So we began with Minister Jones, and I thought maybe we could close with him as well. We have a question that I think he'll be able to speak to well. So asking how we bring other allies into this fight. So how do we activate more people and get more people to care about this issue and the issues that we've been discussing?
Very important question, and one of the things that my organization is doing on both sides of the river. Tonight we have the Native American House Alliance from Philadelphia here. The original environmentalists and environmental justice folks. And so it's important that we honestly see the collaboration between suburban towns and suburban groups and urban people. That's critical to stopping this problem. And that's how we organize, and that's how we are effective. It's important that we build this coalition, and my organization, other organizations are doing exactly that. Working across boundaries, working across class lines and ethnic lines, and this is how we get the job done in terms of honestly stopping this once and for all. So it's important that we educate people in working class white towns and suburban towns. I use that very loosely, but suburban towns, working class towns, because it will affect them just as well. If there's an explosion in Camden, it will affect Gloucester City, which is adjacent to Camden. It will affect Collinswood, which is a middle-class suburban town. It will affect Cherry Hill, which is an upper middle-class town. And up and down the 295 corridor will affect everybody. So one thing about this LNG plant, it will equally, in a sense, bring tragedy to all of us at the same time. So by stopping it now, we can prevent a tragedy going forward. But my point is, Coalition building across ethnic lines and class lines is how we get the job done. And that's what my organization is about, and that's what we all here are about tonight.
Thank you.
Mangaliso is at the door. Mangaliso. This is Mangaliso Davis. He's the chair of the Camden County African American Commission. I'm glad that he stopped in tonight. And so, thank you.
And one really quick point when to that question, how do we build the ranks? How do we get more people involved? One really 30,000 times more really easy way for us to get more people involved in this fight is that we realize that we need to take the same passion that we have for environmental justice, we need to take that to the social justice fights. If we leverage the power that we have and the voices that we have and the relationships that we have, and we brought that to social justice, that means the people who are being disrespected, exploited, abused, displaced, all those different people can now be among the ranks fighting for environmental justice. So let's leverage the power here, and it's also the right thing to do. We can't say we care about the environment and then don't care about the people who are being adversely disrespected on a daily basis in certain environments. So, but I don't try to appeal to the heartstrings. I'm about practicality. Practicality is we have a lot of people get arrested and a lot of people in prison and a lot of people who are disenfranchised every day. If we take this energy to that fight, just from a number standpoint, we're automatically bringing a lot of people to this fight. So it's just mathematics. For the racist, that's fine. I don't care if you're racist or not, that's cool. But you can still help the environment and still be racist. I don't really care. I don't think I'm gonna change your racism, but we need you in this fight. So put your racism hat off, take it off, and then come over here, fight for social justice. Let's fix the planet, and you can go back to being racist. All right.
Great, well, thank you so much for all of your wisdom